Good afternoon. Welcome to another program here of Nutrition and Health on our Islamic Sharia Council TV. Welcome again. Lately, we've had a lot of flu cases and cold cases and COVID cases, and people have been confused with, whether I have COVID or flu or RSV, and there's a lot of things going around. And what we wanted to do is maybe discuss some nutrients and some things that we can take to prevent us from getting the cold and the flu and to strengthen our body and our defense systems. It's very important to know that and to recognize the differences between the cold and the flu and the different signs and symptoms. So with the cold, of course, we know that the symptoms usually start gradually, and with a flu infection, it'll start very quickly and abruptly. So that's a key difference right there. And also, if you have a sore throat and a fever, I would say get tested for COVID or RSV or one of these other viral infections. Because right now, people, we're here in the winter. We're in California. Winter's not that pronounced here, but other places in the U.S., people are really cold, and then winter is getting really cold, and they're getting these types of viruses, and the numbers have gone up. So we have to be able to differentiate. Also, the fever is common with the flu and with the viral infection, where with the cold itself, you won't get a fever. Aches are common with the flu. With the cold, it's not too much. You get a little bit slight achy. Chills. The flu will give you chills, the flu and viral infections. A normal common cold will not. And of course, with sneezing, the common cold, you get sneezing and sniffling. With the flu, you'll get some, but not as much. Chest discomfort and the cough. In the flu, it's very common. You'll get both. With the cold, it'll be mild to moderate. You'll get a little, but not too much. Stuffy nose, common with the cold. Sore throat is very common with the cold, but with the flu, it's sometimes. Sometimes you'll get a stuffy nose with the flu. Sometimes you'll get a sore throat, but not always. But with the cold, it's very common. And then, of course, we have what some people get, the headache. The headache, usually with flu symptoms and viral infections, you do get headaches. With a common cold, it's very rare that you get a headache. So these are things to keep in mind in terms of signs and symptoms that you'll see. But if you do have a cough that's persistent, a sore throat that's persistent, loss of taste, loss of appetite, these things, I would get tested for COVID as well and differentiate that. Otherwise, you might have some type of infection or the flu, or you might just have the common cold. But, what do we do to keep ourselves from getting these things and to kind of strengthen our bodies with nutrition and healing? Of course, we're always saying on this program, food is thy medicine, number one. If you are having a well-balanced, nutritious diet, meaning the types of food that you eat, you're getting your 5 to 7 vegetables and fruits a day, you're getting a good amount of clean protein, you're staying away from processed foods, you're staying away from refined sugars, added sugars. Natural sugars are okay, but added and refined sugars in foods, those are detrimental to your immunological system. You will have more colds and more infections and more viral infections if you're in a highly sugary diet, meaning you have the added sugars, the refined sugars, the processed sugars. That's something to keep in mind. There have been many studies that have shown that if you are in a high sugar diet, or you're consuming a higher sugar diet and it's processed and it's refined sugars, you are more likely to get infections in terms of common cold, flus, even other viral infections. So those are things that you need to keep in mind in terms of the diet. It's very important. There are certain things you can do if you do come down with the cold or flu, right? We've always obviously heard of vitamin C and zinc, right? Vitamin C and zinc lozenges, very important. Vitamin C itself doesn't prevent, but it does increase your immune response to an infection. So it does alleviate the symptoms and signs and makes them much less. It's very important to keep that in mind. Those are some things that we've heard. Echinacea. Echinacea is something that people take, and that also dampens the cold response and the immune response to the cold. These things are important to keep in mind and to take. And then in terms of your white blood cells, right? Your neutrophils are what is your body's defense to any type of infection. I mentioned before that if you have a high sugar diet, it decreases your white blood effect in terms of fighting disease. So you need to decrease the sugars. It's very important. Any type of artificial sugar, any type of added sugar, any type of refined sugar, these things have been studied over time, and unfortunately it's not pushed, but sugary drinks, sugary diets are marketed to us, but we should know that if we consume high sugar diets, we'll have more infections in the long run in terms of colds, flus, viruses. We'll have more of these, more sneezing and more sniffles. It's very important to keep that in mind. Donuts, comes to mind. Everyone, have a donut. It's very high sugar item. These things are very, I would say, toxic. We need to eliminate the refined sugars from the body and from the diet. Also, uncovering and eliminating or desensitizing allergies is also very, very close, like sugar, when it comes to cold prevention, right? So we see a lot of kids with recurring colds, and the health practitioner will see all these types of infections, bronchitis, flu, you get that deep cough from the lung, it's bronchitis. It's important to keep in mind, what's causing all this? What causes that weakness where we get the infection? Is it just hygiene? Is it some that we're getting it from other people, or are we really, having a weak constitution in our bodies in terms of not developing our immune systems strong enough to fight these pathogens? We need to make sure that if we're getting recurrent colds and infections, we need to make sure that we strengthen our bodies in a natural way with our nutrients and with our foods that we eat, so that we don't get them. We want to build our body's store of natural antibiotics, so we don't have to have the artificial antibiotics. It's good to have it when it's necessary, but we want our natural human antibiotics to take effect. That's very important. Usually, if there is an allergen and your child is allergic to some type of wheat, gluten, dairy products, whatever it is, if you eliminate that and if you find out what the allergen is, they'll have a better experience with infections as well. They'll have less cold infections, less flu infections, less viral infections in general. So low sugar diet, find out what the allergens are, and these allergies, particularly food allergies, and if these offending allergens were eliminated, then the recurrent colds and the infections will also hopefully vanish. It'll decrease. So that's very important to keep in mind. Same thing goes across the board with adults and children. A lot of adults have allergies as well, in terms of mold, seasonal allergies, all types. And if you can remove that allergen or desensitize the adult, then they will have less infections in terms of colds and coughs and sniffling. That's very important. The other way to build your body's natural human antibiotic would be to increase your vitamin D intake. Vitamin D is very important. They recommend anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 IU's per day per person in terms of if you have some type of infection. If you take that, it'll increase your own body's response to the allergen or to the cold or to the virus. It's very important to do that. They recommend 3,000 to 4,000 per day IUs of vitamin D for adults, and 1,000 to 3,000 for children. So that's what the recommendation is. For your particular self, you want to talk to your healthcare practitioner and ask them, what's a good dosage of vitamin D that you can take. They usually test your vitamin D and they'll let you know if you're deficient. They also have what's known as echinacea, right? Echinacea we discussed. Echinacea is utilized because it increases the production of natural killer cells in your body. It's a type of cell that gets rid of antigens and viruses. It eats them up. The NK cells fight off infection in the body. So echinacea increases the NK cells. So that's why people ingest it. It's a type of herb, I would say, echinacea. Too much of it, some people react to. They have sort of like a hay fever, or they get a little bit of a reaction. But that's what that is. The other thing that in Canada people used a lot was called cold fix. And cold fix was a type of herb that was with Korean ginseng. It got to the point where the National Hockey League in Canada was utilizing this herb, this ginseng, and the FDA equivalent of Canada started giving this thing prophylactically to Canadians to prevent colds and viruses from happening. So it's called cold fix. Korean ginseng, that's what it is. They use that, and it's an extract of American ginseng. Korean ginseng is a little better quality. So that's what they use there. That's something that is prevalent here. You can get it at the herb store. You can get an American ginseng or Korean ginseng. You can mix it with a drink and have it, and that also helps with the severity and duration of colds and flu-like symptoms, and it boosts your immune system. Also, it's good for men who have virility issues. They take the Korean ginseng, so it's important. That's the Korean is the Asian type, and there's also the American type, and it has therapeutic effects for colds, and get the it's important to get the right type of ginseng for the different issues that people have. The other thing that people take is colloidal silver. They take drops of that, and that prevents the virus from binding in the body in different cell receptors. So that's something which is an herb that people use. And then also zinc. What does zinc do? There's zinc acetate. That's a type. All these herbs, they need some type of ligand for it to process and get absorbed in the body. So zinc, they have zinc acetate. If you take zinc at the onset of a cold, it knocks it out by half the time. So the duration of that cold, usually the research shows that it's 50% decreased. So people take the zinc and for the cold not to get more severe and affect other things. That's very common now. With the onset of COVID, people had whole lists of things that they were taking. Zinc was one of them, as you all know. And zinc has, there's zinc acetate, zinc aspartate, zinc citrate, zinc picolinate. There's all types of them. So you got to figure out exactly which one to take to treat your common cold. It's important, but I think zinc acetate was the one that they decided was the best for the cold. So I think those are some things that will help. And then, of course, general nutrition. Of course, if you're taking your 2,000 calories a day, on a normal intake of calories, you want to balance the type of calories you're taking. You don't want to be taking all those empty sugar calories, which obviously is going to lead to worse health problems in terms of if you're trying to fight infections or if you're trying to prevent infections. So that's very important. A lot of people say, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure, right? An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. We always say this on the show. Much better to prevent things than to come down with them and then to reverse them. So if you can prevent things, it's much better. So we always advocate for that. The immune system of the body is a wonderful system, and if you fuel it with the right nutrients, with the right supplements, with the right herbs, with the right vitamins, with the right nutrition, then you'll experience with your colds and flus and these things that you get will be much more milder, and the duration will be much less. So that's our advice to you. And more importantly, if you do have chronic infections that you're getting, you should go to your healthcare provider, go talk to them, and tell them, and figure out a sustainable way to get to the root of the problem, to see what the issue is. It can't be that you just have a predilection of getting colds and flus and fevers and viral infections all the time. There has to be something more to it. So you want to discuss that with your doctor and ask them how to increase and strengthen the constitution of your body so that you have a better experience of health and you achieve optimal health. That's very important. With that, I'd like to close today's show. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments or questions, please let us know in the comment section. We'll see you next week. Thank you.